when we talk about advantage and disadvantage, I want to be careful. We had a class that students were given an opportunity to get some added help, I guess, through some guest speakers and some things that were available to provide them some added, I guess, oomph behind them. This was in an EMT class, but it resulted in a really strong awareness and understanding in them that then resulted in them, those particular people that took on that opportunity, it resulted in them performing exceptionally well in a couple of areas. And there was a particular student who did not partake in that opportunity, who expressed that they were disadvantaged in their movement towards the evaluation that took place that these other students performed really well in. And so I needed to make sure that that was clear to them on what they were saying. So do understand that when an opportunity arises, that might give you an advantage, but that does not disadvantage another person. Does that make sense? The only way a disadvantage would come in is if during this opportunity that you decided to partake in and your fellow classmate did not, if during there we covered a piece of information that was not available for everyone else, and then we evaluated everybody on that piece of information. Does that make sense? Because then we did disadvantage anyone else who didn't have that opportunity. But just because you participate in something that gives you an advantage does not mean that the person who did not participate in that is disadvantaged in any way. And I say that both on the negative and the positive side. For those of you that are looking for things to give you an advantage in some fashion, look for those opportunities and partake in them. And for those of you that don't want to do that, make sure you're understanding that you're just on level playing ground. Does that make sense? And just be really clear on that. Good? That also comes into play and just know that as we are starting to do more related to evaluations and grades and this kind of stuff, when you come and talk to me, and again, I'm saying this just because I had a student who did not in this class that did this already this term. A student that comes in and talks to an instructor about a grade or an evaluation they received, I'll often have a student that will start off by saying something to the effect of, I wanted to talk about the grade you gave me, right? And you need to know how aggressive I'm going to be on that, because I will immediately stop you. And I will say, you want to talk about the grade you earned. It's not the grade I gave you. It is the grade you earned. Now, let's talk about what you want to talk about related to this grade that you just earned. Does that make sense? So just be really clear on how you look at things, and make sure you look at them kind of in that light, right? And then just to kind of move that or talk a little bit about that, I want to find the happy ground so you remember when I talked about how you're doing skills and how I didn't want you to narrate those skills to an evaluator, but I didn't mind, and in fact, if it's helpful, do it, narrate those skills to yourself and to your partners. Remember my discussion on that? Okay. And there's some of you in here that instantly understand what I'm saying. And there's a few of you in here that are still, I don't see the difference. I'm still saying everything that I'm doing. I'm still saying, hey, I see the chords, right? bringing about the understanding of the difference between those two things is something that has to come from you inherently. You have to start to see those differences. And I can explain things, and I can try to lead you down this path, and I can certainly just say, do it this way, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you internalize what the difference is there and what the mental difference is between that. And it comes down to a difference, or it's similar in nature to the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. If you ever want to get good at something, I don't care what it is, underwater basket weaving, I don't know. In Idaho, we had this reservoir called Lucky Peak Reservoir, just outside of Boise, and every October 31st was really cool. Because on Halloween, you went up there in your scuba gear, and they gave you pumpkins, and you did underwater pumpkin carving with a visibility of about 3 inches. It was awesome. And you try not to cut off your hands. And it wasn't warm water, so it was great. If you want to get good at underwater pumpkin carving, your ability to get good at that skill requires an intrinsic motivation. You have to want to do that. Having a $200 prize for whoever wins the best pumpkin carving is not a motivation that will actually ever make you awesome and a professional pumpkin carver. Because that's an extrinsic motivation, and it's cool if you win, but it's not the thing, right? The lottery was huge here a couple of weeks ago, right? But not very many people even thought about going to get a ticket. Some of you went, oh, I got a ticket. And some of you are going, I forgot all about going and getting a ticket because it got too late. And it wasn't like an everyday thing for you because the winning of that lottery one is so remote for you, but it's an extrinsic motivating factor. I can talk about the adjectives that describe intrinsic motivations, but I can't make you have an intrinsic motivation to do anything. And in the context of this, I'm talking about becoming a paramedic, right? And not just becoming a paramedic, but becoming a really good paramedic. That's not something I can give you. I can just talk to you about how it is for me, and I can talk to you about adjectives that describe it, and I can talk to you about the feelings that go along with that. But that motivating factor has to come from you. However, even though I can't, it's not something that anyone can teach you, that's something that has to come from you, it's readily apparent. You wear that on your body. You wear your intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations completely on the front end of everything you do. And so when somebody asks me, so talk to me about how they're motivated. Talk to me about how this person interacts. Talk to me about how they're going to be, 5 years down the road as a medic or 2 years down the road as a medic. That I can talk about because that I do see. Does that make sense? And so it's my plea for you to find the things that motivate you to be good and to do those things in everything that you do. Right? So some of you come down to the workout, for example, and some of you are like working your asses off, trying to do everything, not because of anything that I'm doing or anything that Quinn's doing or anything that's saying you need to do this, but because you have that motivation to do something to better yourself in some fashion, right? And others of you are like, well, I'm here. That's good. I got out of bed today, right? And I'm not even necessarily saying right now that that's good or bad. I'm not discussing it in relation to good or bad. I am though saying that the ability to watch you do that and to see the difference between those that are intrinsically motivated to do that and those of you that really don't care, it's clear. Those don't think that those things aren't clear. Does that make sense? And I'm not by any means suggesting or thinking that me talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivations is automatically going to change your motivation for whatever it is that you're doing, right? But I am saying that you have to find something in you that says, this is the way I'm going to do things, and I'm going to show that. Am I making sense? I'm trying to come out and say things without like pulling people apart. Yes?
Is this because of the deficit that you're noticing?
No,
or what?
actually it's not because of a deficit. It's because of a couple of incidences that have happened outside of this class, and I notice a trend in some people in this class as well. Not a trend that makes me concerned that you're gonna fail out in the next couple of weeks, but a trend that says, wow, students that have been in that kind of realm have often been the students that haven't made it at the tail end. And it wasn't because they couldn't have been good. And some of those students who wouldn't make it at the end would then come back another time, and they found that intrinsic motivation and they did what they needed to do, and they were wishing they would have done that the first time, but it just took them longer to find that. And I guess I want to bring your awareness to that, to say, hey, some of you maybe need to find that and look for those motivating factors for why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. Does that make sense? Okay, now something that does directly affect you. Again, it didn't come from this class, but it is related to paramedic, absolutely. Please be aware that so yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Chris was talking and I made an interjection to the effect of you can do something, do something, right? Do it really good or do it really bad, because either one of those things is something we can talk about, but if you don't do it, we really don't have a whole lot to be able to talk to you about. Remember when I said that? Okay, I want to make it very clear that regardless of how we talk or try to motivate or move you forward, this is your safe place to fail. And failing is not necessarily bad in my mind, and frankly, I'm the one that ultimately evaluates you and sends you on to the doctor, so it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that that failing at the end means you become a paramedic. But I am saying that along the way right now, as you're doing scenarios, or you're doing evaluation, or you're doing these other things, failing is okay, because that's something that you can learn from, as long as you do learn from that. Does that make sense? What is absolutely never okay, and why I'm bringing it up now is because we're dealing with this. What is absolutely never okay is for you to find a way to pretend you were successful when you were not. And the easiest way for you to pretend you were successful when you were not is to write your own evaluation and pass it off as a preceptor's evaluation. That's a really fast way for you to not be a paramedic. And I do want to just, I want to give you one brief short story with a point, because this happened 2 years ago. We had a student who went through the EMT program, decent student, had some challenges, or at least I had some challenges with him, but he was a decent student. And scores-wise, and even skills-wise, he was top third of EMTs. He was pretty good. He wanted to go on to both paramedic and nursing. He actually attempted to do both in the same year. That's not able to be done for a whole variety of reasons. And he ended up going the direction of nursing. Perfectly fine. In one of the terms of his nursing time, he cheated on a test. And the cheating of that particular test was pretty significant, and it ended up getting a faculty member fired over it because of their participation in this cheating moment. And he tried to explain it away in a couple of different ways. He tried to use my class and classes he took at the University of Oregon as examples of why he did what he did, because he was trying to suggest that his studying was being modeled after something that we provided him, which there was some correlation there, but it was clearly against the regulations that the nursing department had set. Okay? But I want you to understand what that ramification meant to him. He ended up being kicked out of the program. But not only was he kicked out of the program, the Oregon Board of Nursing got involved as well, because they have to be, because it's part of the regulations and an accreditation process for nursing programs. And when the Oregon Board of Nursing got involved, it eliminated him from ever being able to take a nursing program in the state of Oregon. So he couldn't even go to another school to take that. In addition to that, in the state of Oregon, it also eliminated him from ever being able to be licensed as a nurse in the state of Oregon. So even if he went to another state and got his nursing, he could never come back to Oregon and be a nurse. They would not allow him to get a license, to get his license. Let me express just a little bit more to that. There is a database in the United States for allied health. That would be EMT, paramedic, nursing, some physical therapy things, anything that requires a license to work but is less than an MD or a nurse practitioner. There's a database that, that schools, hospitals, and there's also one of those databases for doctors, which you should be recognizing now as you're listening to Dr. Death. That same database that he was not entered into, God, give me a break. That same kind of database is also set up for all allied healths too. And what it means is that when a license is taken away or the decision to make it inaccessible for someone to get their license, they get entered into that database as well. So that if they go to another agency, it's a way to keep people from going from agency to agency or from organization to organization, causing problems. Unfortunately, it didn't work in Dr. Dunch's situation. But in the case of that database, he was entered into that database. And because he was entered into that database, when the state EMS office does their background checks to renew your license, he comes up in that database, which means he also lost his EMT license. He cheated on one exam in nursing school, and he's no longer ever able to become licensed as a nurse in Oregon, nor can he ever become licensed as an EMT or a paramedic in the state of Oregon. And that database is national, so the likelihood of him ever getting a license in the healthcare industry in any state in the United States is unlikely, just off of making one bad decision right there, okay? And so now we have a student who writes their own evaluation for a preceptor, but the preceptor going, I didn't write that evaluation. In fact, I asked if they had an evaluation for me to fill out, and they said no. And then they wrote their own evaluation, creates a bit of a problem. You see that? So I would encourage you, it's much better on you to fail miserably and let us, I can do something with somebody that fails miserably but still has that intrinsic motivation to try to be what it is that you're trying to be. What I can't help is somebody who is not intrinsically motivated to become a paramedic, and I can't help somebody who purposely makes themselves pass something that they clearly have not. Does that make sense? Questions? I'm sorry I take time to talk about that, but it's critical for you to hear some of those things and make sure that you're making good decisions when it comes to it. I don't like when we talk about the fact that this is a year-long interview, it really is. But I don't want that to be an extrinsic motivating factor for you to do good, right? You still need to find that intrinsic factor to do good. But those are things that I look at, right? I watch how you interact with your fellow classmates. I watch how you interact with people in the halls. I watch how you interact with other people just in the public. I watch how you interact on scenes and with agencies, and I have people that talk, and we watch what this is to see what your overall motivating factors are, and then also to find out what kind of challenges and frustrations you have and how you overcome those. Those are all things that I'm looking at to see who you are as a person and to see who you are going to become as a medic. So whatever that means, just kind of keep those things in mind. Sound good? What questions are?
Will you let us know if you think or any instructor thinks that we're out of line?
What do you mean by out of line?
I guess I don't have specific in terms of Adeline. I mean, I understand that our intrinsic motivation for learning our drugs for stuff like that. I mean, I'm not worried about the academic piece of it in terms of grades. I'm just worried about if something comes to light that a student is doing, how forthcoming are you and or other instructors towards that person?
Yeah, good question. I will address large global issues like, Chandlin, you're not treating Sarah correctly. You need to stop
agree with
that. Yeah, you need to find a different way of, your interaction is causing problems, right? I will talk about global things that directly affected somebody else. What I won't come to you about is saying, you know, Chandlin, I'm watching you and you're just, it's like you're in a haze, or it's like you're really not interested in being there. I don't know why, but it just looks like you're bored. It looks like you don't really care about this. I won't come to you on that. But if you came to me to ask me, hey, how do you think I'm doing? I would absolutely be forthcoming in saying, you're looking kind of bored. It looks like you don't really want to be here. Does that make sense? Yep. So I won't come to you about those personal things that are related to your motivations. I will absolutely talk to you wholeheartedly if you want to talk about those kinds of things and you come to me. If it's global and affecting somebody else, then I will step in and say, this needs to change, or we need to remove you or change you or do something different because it's affecting somebody else now. So that's something I would come and talk about. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And
those for like clinicals, if you hear something from a preceptor or
same thing. If it's something that is related to how you would approach a patient and you're in a moment that you could potentially not do a good job, I would come and talk to you. If it was related to, yeah, he showed up and he just doesn't look like he wants to be there. He did good patient care, but he doesn't look like he really wants to be there. And he doesn't really seem like he's interested in being a paramedic. His skills are all good. I wouldn't come and talk to you because those are, now we're talking about those intrinsic motivations that you need to have. But again, if you came and said, you know what, I just have been feeling like I'm a little off and I wanted to see what I could do or what you've been hearing, then I would say, okay, people are thinking that you're really not interested. You've got good skills, you've got good knowledge, but it seems like you're not interested. And then we would have that kind of a conversation. So anything that's related to your own personal motivations, I won't come to you about because it's related to you being motivated, right? Anything that would affect patient care, affect other people, that kind of stuff, I would come to you. Or of course, if you were doing something that's causing you to fail, then I would be coming and talking and say, hey, look, we need to do something different because you're on a path that's going the wrong direction. Was that a hand raise?
Yeah, but
Are you sure?
ask it.
I mean, but that's your assumption.
What's my assumption?
Of someone's motivation, based on their outward appearance.
Yeah, so some things would be my assumptions and assessments, and you're right that a lot of that is subjective, but it's subjective based on a whole lot of students and seeing a whole lot of things. And you're absolutely, it could be that there's something going on in your life that is completely different than or giving you off a demeanor that is causing that demeanor to seem like it's lack of motivation. And even in that situation, I wouldn't come to you unless I saw like a depression type of a thing, and I'm concerned about just how you're doing. And some of you've already experienced that, where I'll come and say, hey, how you doing? You're looking off today. You're looking different than normal. That's different though. When it comes to everything else, I will wait for you, when it's related to your personal feelings on something, I will wait for you to come to me if you want to have that discussion. I will not wait for you to come to me if it's related to your overall performance, objective performance. If it's an objective performance thing, then I'll come to you and talk to you because you either have to perform or not in some fashion. So. I will admit I can't remove some subjectivity in something like that, so that is true. Nobody can. Cool. And every student's different, absolutely. But that being said, I'm not gonna get philosophical on you. And if you want to, I can give you a book to read.
Yeah, what's the book?
But we all tend to think that we are way different than everyone else. But when we start breaking it down and looking at psychology and the statistics of it, we actually are less different than you might think. And our motivations are also less different than they are similar in a lot of factors. And the fact that many of you are sitting there going, well, my motivations are different than everyone else's is a point of fact, because we're all similarly saying that to ourselves right now.
Well, but
So-
psychology also says that when you see an outward behavior, you're automatically gonna attribute it to external characteristics versus if you
Often.
haven't-
Yes,
right?
you do, we do.
So right there's a problem with the subject.
I don't disagree. So, if you want some easy reading, I can look up the book name and give you some nice easy reading to do, and you can decide for yourself on some of this stuff. Okay. All right. Whatever it is. Some of you have found, well, some of you have